Hello lovely people, how are you all doing today? I do hope you're well. So, part two, I'm going to just go straight in and continue with everything we were talking about yesterday, the other day, with regards to sort of my smaller hand tools, accessories, all the bits of kit I use in the garden. And we'll get to the end and I'll hopefully try to decide what are my absolute must-haves, what can I not do without in the garden. So here we are, continuing on from where we left off yesterday. Oh, I think it's about to lash down. I am going to get soaked going home, I think. So, out and about in the garden. Sorry, Rusty, don't freak, buddy. Don't freak, sweetie. Trug. A big trug. Oh my goodness, so useful. Again, it's one of those things where, especially at this time of year, it's pretty much always by my side, whether I'm weeding, chucking weeds in it, whether I'm chopping down plants, chop my plants, chuck them in it. It's great, especially if I'm in the middle of the beds and I don't necessarily want to bring the wheelbarrow into the bed. Rarely without. Let's see if I can pop this away without freaking out our Rusty. It's all right, buddy. Oh, his little buddy. Oh, his little face of concern. So that's fab for my weeds. And then, of course, oh, I can't lift it up. I've got, let's show you my little one here. This is all set up and ready to go. So I've got a couple of these little trugs. Again, really useful. The bigger one, which I'm sure you've all seen many, many times, it's great for doing harvesting. If I'm just picking for a few days of harvest, I like it because it's cane, because it's woven, you know, dusty soil can drop out of it. It's good, it's firm, it's sturdy. What I really like it for is having all my tools together when I'm out in the garden. So I'll think ahead about what I'm going to be doing in that session. And for instance, when it comes to, say, the garlic and broad beans, I will have with me these, plus all my seeding bits. I'll be making my rows. I'll have my hori knife with me. As always, maybe I'll see a horrid perennial weed I want to dig out. I'll have my dibber with me. So it's really handy, I find, to just have it all in the basket. You can get sort of tool aprons. I just find that sort of thing a bit cumbersome. I don't want all that stuff around my belly or even sort of either side on my hips as I'm sort of bending and moving. Chug, brilliant. Just take it with me, plonk it down. The little one, you can see it's all set and ready. You see, with my cloved up garlic ready for planting. Perfect for this job. If I've got big seeds like say my broad beans or any others, you know, I often keep things in jam jars. They go in the big trug and come out with me. Something like the garlic, I've got too much and it's too big for a jam jar. Pop it in here. So this and the trug with all my little hand tools out to the garden. I've got everything I need to hand. So yeah, trugs are... I've just knocked that lot over. I was trying to keep them divided between my violette and my white garlic. Again, it's one of those things down to that. If I had to do without, which would I do without? Which would I prefer to do without? I actually wouldn't want to be without any of them. The small trug, I would be without the small trug. But the large wicker trug and the big bucket, the big orange bucket trug, yeah, I wouldn't want to do without those. And in that sort of same sort of family of moving things around the garden, I've got my wheelbarrow. Now, we do have communal wheelbarrows here, but oh, they're always flat. They're always punctured. And when I was building the shed, I had to cart sand from, oh my God, it nearly killed me, the main road, about 500 metres or more away. And yeah, I was going to have to do that, and I didn't want to rely on the communal wheelbarrows, always punctured, so I bought that one. I'd had a tax refund, it was great. I bought the shed, I bought my Barrow, brilliant. And I bought one with a puncture-proof wheel really, really good on an allotment site where there are brambles invading everywhere. It's puncture proof. And it's been really, really useful. I mean, you've seen it. How many times when I do a harvest, do I do it in my barrow? However, if I didn't have it, yeah, I'd do without. So I think, if you're looking at getting all your kit sorted, I don't think a barrow is top of the list. Especially if you've got communal barrows with puncture-proof wheels, check. If you get an allotment, if you're new to an allotment, do check with the committee. Are there communal tools you can use? Firstly, just so that you can see whether you like the allotment life. You might not, for whatever reason. And if you do, try a few different tools. And if you find that you're always using a barrow, you might think, I'd like my own because the communal ones are always being used by someone else, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think to start with, like the big orange trog is a great purchase. Really, really useful. And like I said, at this time of year especially, it's always next to me. What else? Other big stuff. Of course, compost bins. I'm really lucky. Both of mine were being chucked out, so I snaffled them up. It's the sort of thing you will see on Free Cycle in the UK. It's our sort of free swap site. There always seem to be compost bins on Free Cycle. Don't rush out to buy one. Keep an eye on Free Cycle. If it's taking ages to find one, you can, of course, and there's tons of like how-to videos on YouTube, you can, of course, make a compost bin out of old pallets. Keep an eye out for pallets. What I would say is, I think you can improvise with your compost bins. I think it's one of those things to not rush out to buy. Improvise, but keep an eye on the Free Cycle sites, and hopefully, before too long, you should get your first bin for free, and then however many more you can fit in over the ensuing months. Other big kit stuff, water butt. Yes, we should all be harvesting our own rainwater as much as possible. Again, when I got mine, I kept an eye on Free Cycle, and there were loads of them going, but they were all massive ones, and sort of like completely the opposite side of London to me, like an hour and a half, 2 hours on public transport. It's just, in the end, I was like, oh, it's not worth it. So I did buy mine, and it's a slimline one, because there's very little space between me and my neighbour's shed. In fact, that was as much space as I could do, was a slimline one. But again, I waited, and I managed to pick mine up when it was on offer. I think it was half price, from £80 to £40. Again, it wasn't one of my first purchases at all. It was quite late in the day that I got that, but I'm really glad I've got it now. Watering cans. That is something you will need. I can't show you mine because, again, Rusty's asleep on top of them. It depends how you will be accessing and using water. Obviously, it might be in your own garden and you've got a hose attached to the house. Lucky you. You might be on an allotment site that has hoses, or you might be like mine where we've got dip tanks. So the tank fills up, we just plunge our watering cans in. And again, this is one of those spend well, spend once. When I first started here, I inherited a couple of plastic watering cans. If you're going to buy a plastic watering can, I would highly advise against red. It seems that red plastic goes brittle much more quickly in the sun than any other colour. If you do have plastic watering cans, when you finish using them, bring them back in your shed, in the shade, somewhere. Don't leave them in the full sun, they'll go brittle. So yeah, I managed for a couple of years with plastic ones. Of course I did. The ones I have now are beautiful. They are the Rolls Royce of watering cans. They're by a company called Haws, Haws. I think some of you may be familiar with them. You may even have their indoor ones at home. They are hideously, eye-wateringly expensive. The model I've got, I don't think they do it anymore, which is a shame because it's quite slim. It's still got the same, is it 2-gallon capacity, but they're sort of deep and slim so that as you're walking, you don't have to walk with your arms like that to hold them. You can actually keep your arms in a more natural position. Really great, brilliant ergonomic design, but £50 each. I mean, I hasten to add, mine were Christmas presents. There's no way I'd ever be able to afford £50 on myself. But that's one of the reasons for mentioning all this now, because if you're in that kind of relationship with someone, either your family, your partner, and they're happy to spend 50 quid on you, get a Hawes watering can. I think they come, I think they come with, I think they've dropped it to a 10-year guarantee. It used to be a 25-year guarantee. But if you look on some of the vintage websites, vintage selling stuff websites, you'll see Hawes watering cans on there from the 1920s. You know, you'll see watering cans on there that are still working perfectly well, that are 100 years old. So again, it's a fantastic investment. It might be one of those investments, again, to kind of hold off on. Give yourself a couple of years, 2-3 years of doing your veggie growing. See if you love it, see if you like it, see if you're staying on top of it, and then make that kind of investment, because it is an investment. I would have thought, though, that even if you got them and then gave up your garden, I think it's probably the sort of thing you would really easily sell on eBay or any of those other, you know, sites where you can sell your old stuff that you don't want anymore. I think that's true. A lot of, like, you know, my Felcos, my Hori Hori. I don't know if I'd be allowed to sell the Hori Hori because it's a knife. I mean, I wouldn't anyway because I love it. I think there are probably rules about selling knives. Anyway, the point is, yeah, this stuff's expensive, but it's going to keep some value. Right, what are we after now? Canes, of course, bean canes. Again, they're quite a chunk of investment. But, you know, what would any of our gardens be without some climbing beans? You probably find that at this time of year, they're not massively available. They're not widely in the shops. By April or so next year, they will be. The garden centres and nurseries will get a load in stock because that's the time of year we think about buying this kind of stuff to, you know, get our gardens ready for our beans. It may be worth, if you wanted to gift something like that to someone, it may be worth speaking to your local nursery or garden centre to see if they have a gift voucher scheme, because that's how I ended up with mine. I was gifted a voucher, and one of my local independent places accepts those vouchers, so I spent the whole voucher on new bean poles. It made me so happy. I was delighted. I mean, if you're buying all this stuff straight away, oh my goodness, a fortune. If you know, the more you can pick up for free along the way, and the more you can improvise by making your own bits, the better. Yeah, definitely. Is there anything else to cover? Ah, yes, and of course, starting our seed. Oh, I've just dripped mucky water on myself. Seed starting, pots. Of course, we all need pots of various sizes. Again, I've picked up the vast majority of mine for nothing. People are chucking them out. It's one of those things, again, look on FreeCycle, look on your local, if you've got a local Facebook group. It's certainly around here, when people have a clear up, they just put stuff on their front wall, just take it, brilliant. And it's that thing, isn't it? I'd rather pick them up, scrounge them, because they're costing me nothing, but B, it's stopping them from going into landfill if I take them and use them. I also have a paper, is it Tand or is it at home? A paper pot maker. It's a lovely wooden item, and then I use newspaper. It kind of wraps around stamps. If you look up paper pot maker, you'll see what I mean. You can make free pots with those, great. Of course, I was mentioning the other day, I've got some of the lovely terracotta pots from my Auntie Teapot's place. So pots, obviously we need. Try and scrounge, brilliant. But then also trays. So this, teetering piles all around me. This tray is a gravel tray, no holes. I've also got seed trays, look exactly the same, except they have holes. I like to have both. I like to have the non-holy ones, especially at the start of the year when I'm bringing things on at home, because then when I'm watering all my pots in there, it's catching the drips, and the drips aren't going all over my living room floor because they're all sat on the floor or the window, wherever it is. Great, it's protecting my home. But also later on, when things start to come to the garden to be hardened off, if we're like last year when we're having lots of heat and lots of dry days and I'm having to water all these little pots all the time, it's great if they're in a gravel tray, because you can actually fill, half fill the tray up and let that sort of slowly wick up, let the plants find it, great. But likewise, it's really useful to have the holy seed trays, either A, because you're filling it with compost and you're starting your seeds in it and you don't want them to drown, you want the excess water to be able to drain out. But also if you've got things, for example, again, let's say we finished hardening things off in the cold frame, I've brought everything out and I've got everything lined up on the deck. Often it's my brassicas because they're waiting to go out, they're waiting for the onions to finish. So I'll have pots and pots and pots in trays on the deck, and let's say we're suddenly due a whole week of rain. I quickly want to swap out these trays, gravel trays, for the seed trays with holes in, so that, again, those plants don't get waterlogged and drown. In terms of quantity of all these things, it's a bit of trial and error. There have been some years I've added a few extra. I added a few extra of the gravel trays. Is it beginning of this year or the beginning of last year? I can't remember when now. But yeah, I was finding I was struggling for trays at home to protect my home. And it's one of those things, it's just, over time you might see, I could do with a few more of those. I've got a little clipboard in my shed with paper on it. It's a really useful thing to have, so I can quickly scribble a note to myself to, if I think, I'm running low on something, or I could do with more of something. I don't find that so much these days, just because I've been at it long enough now to have accumulated. Plant labels. I was given a packet of these in my stocking 3 years or so ago. I'm not massively keen on the plastic labels, but you can see I write on them in pencil. Sweet dump. Sweet dump. That was from my sweet dumplings. And simply that means I can erase the whatever I've written on there, give it a wash, great, use it again and again and again and again. What I quite often use is lolly sticks, coffee stirrers. You have to write on them quite hard, otherwise it fades quite quickly. But then the great thing about these, of course, is if at the end of the season I've left a few in, I've missed a few, they can just rot in the soil. Whereas if you miss some of these and they end up getting incorporated, I don't want the next person to have my garden after me to be digging these up in years to come. So prefer these, but was given these, so I'll jolly well make the most of them, look after them, use them year after year after year. We're getting there. Right, just a couple of last things to say. Just check my list, check it twice. Yes. What was I going to say? Yes. Someone was mentioning, who was mentioning this the other day? I can't remember. You know what I was saying about having my scissors and ending up having a spare pair of scissors in the shed permanently and a pair of scissors at home? Likewise with this little tool. It's so handy. Now, I haven't been doing much by way of building or, any projects in the garden. But at a time I was. And I was continually having to remember to bring this from home. And then I'd go home and I'd realise I'd left it in the shed and I'd need it at home, so I'd have to come back to the shed to get it and then take it home, and the next day I'd be back at the shed and I think, oh, I've left it at home. So I thought, I'll just get a second one. It's one of these that's got multi-heads, all different, can you see in there, all different size heads, some spares there, they just slot in the end. It's compact, it's dead handy. I mean, the number of times I've put my hand out for it, great. I guess it depends what kind of gardener you're going to be and what you're going to do in your garden. But are you struggling, buddy? There he goes. Yeah. Even if you don't have one for your shed, have one for your home. Really, really handy. I keep most of my tools at home hidden quite away. You know, they're bulky, they're ugly, what have you. But I have this in one of my kitchen drawers. It's always to hand, dead easy. Brilliant. And the other thing, am I going to get bits out? I'm not going to bother getting bits out, is a bit of a first aid kit. I don't want to have to remind you all that garden is an anagram of danger. Ba ba ba. Yeah, I've got a simple first aid kit here. I've got an antiseptic spray so that it doesn't have to be any contact between dirty hands and a wound. Spray, spray, spray. I keep some sterile dressings, quite big dressing pads, plasters, bandage, tape, all those very basic bits and bobs. Partly for me, but also partly because when there's accidents on the plot, people come to the shed. It's Nurse Vivian. It's not that, this is not an ideal environment to wound oneself because it's a dirty environment. So the idea with the bits I keep in the shed is it's very, very temporary. Get a wound as clean as I can, as quickly as I can with the spray. I mean, it's not really, cleaning it, but kind of hopefully halting it in its steps. Get that sterile dressing on there, create a pressure dressing if I need to, and basically if it's that kind of wound, I'm only doing that until an ambulance arrives or until someone brings their car around and they can take whoever's been hurt, they can take them off to A&E. I keep a bit of antihistamine cream in the shed just because I react so badly to mosquito bites and to, ants, red ants. Oh. And that's about it really, just very basic, but a little bit there. The other thing I do kind of annually, I check all my bits because these things do go out of date, even sterile dressing packs go out of date. And because I actually don't use my first aid kit very much, sometimes things do go out of date. So before I get fully into the season, so around about March or April, before I get full pell-mell into the season again and everyone comes back from their winter break, I'll check my first aid kit. If something's out of date, right, that's it, swap it out, go and get something new to replace it. I think that's it. Gosh, I think I've been talking for a long time, haven't I? Of course, the other things I haven't mentioned are a shed and somewhere to sit. If you haven't got that, well, again, it's not the immediate thing, is it? Or maybe it is. It's great having a shed because if there's a passing but really heavy shower, I can come in the shed, sit it out, and get back out into the garden when the sun comes back out and I can carry on. Obviously I store all my produce, my pots, my trays, especially, living in a tiny home, it's great to have this space to store. And things like the nets, it's bulky stuff, so I don't want to be carting that backwards and forwards to my home. So the shed is great. But of absolutely everything I've talked about today, and I realise I've talked a lot, I hope it's been interesting, I hope it's been useful. I would say my must-haves from that list I've just talked about: some sort of trug, barrow, basket trug, whatever it is, something for moving around the plot, whether it's chopping down old plants to take them to the compost heap, whether it's harvesting, whether it's somewhere to put your weeds, or if it's somewhere to carry your small equipment out to the garden, something, a container of some sort that you can move easily around the plot, from the shed to the plot. I'm fortunate, I've got my basket truck, my big plastic truck and my Barrow. You could get away with just one of those if you really had to. So they're essential from what I've talked about today. Enviromesh, absolutely essential here. The big flat square piece as opposed to the hooped tunnels, but the hooped tunnels, the ready-made hooped tunnels are just wonderful. They make life so much easier too, just a bit less adaptable. And then finally, it's my absolute stars of the show. Yeah, every time, I'm going to say these two things. Of all the smaller stuff, I haven't talked about my long-handled tools yet, but of all my smaller bits of kit, these two are the stars of the show. They're the most expensive bits of kit I've got, apart from my watering cans. They're also my essential kit. They are the most expensive bits, but frankly they're going to be probably the longest lasting items in my kit, and two of the most heavily used items. I think of everything I use in the garden, this is number one. This is the item. It's just in constant use. Whatever I'm doing in the garden, I'm using it for something or other. So if I could only invest in one item out of everything I've shown you today, hori knife. Yay! Well, oopla. Oh, I forgot to say tool that's just fallen down next to me. So this, as I discovered, was it last year? Gabby sent it to me, and I used it again this spring. This was great to wrap around seed trays to stop mice getting in to nick my pea seeds. It worked an absolute treat. All right, my lovelies. Well, oh, and stool. My stool. I'm sitting on my stool. Right. Orange bucket, secateurs, hori knife, and a seat. Essential kit. I really hope that's been helpful, useful. I hope any of those of you who've maybe got your first garden this year I hope you've managed to accumulate a few really useful bits and pieces for your garden. But if that's given you any ideas, hopefully that's in time for you to let your loved ones know. Look, I always think it's a weird one, isn't it, when you ask someone for something specific for Christmas. I wouldn't dream of doing it. However, if someone asks me, then, you know, I would rather say to that person, depending on how much money they spend, say it's the kind of person who spends money. If they said to me, what would you like for Christmas? I'd rather say, oh, please may I have a pair of Felco No. 2 secateurs, that's what these are, than them spend the same amount of money but buying me, oh, I don't know, a flashy handbag. What do people do with handbags? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, hopefully that's in time to be useful for any of you. Started to think about what might come down the chimney in a couple of months' time. Right, it's suddenly getting really chilly. I feel a bit ooh. So I'm going to call it a day there. Hopefully settled weather tomorrow for a few days. Get back, garlic, broad beans, and we can do the second part of this video. You see the cats are all gone now. I'm going to have to get everything out of the shed to show you because there's no room in here. But we'll do that hopefully in the next few days. All right, lovelies. So until then, lots of love. Take care. I'll see you soon. Cheerio.